I flew to a city I hadn't seen in 5 years, thinking I was invited to a farewell gala for the man who shaped my career. The hotel was upscale, polished marble floors, chandeliers. I was doing my best not to sweat through my dress. I brought a vintage bottle of bourbon, a thank you card, and an unsealed envelope holding a check I hadn't told anyone about. At the front desk, the hostess scanned the guest list. Her smile faltered. She looked uncomfortable. "Sorry, this is a private event," I said. "I'm Mara Renner. I used to be his protégé. I'm basically family." She nodded, her gaze darting to the floor. "Someone will come talk to you." Instead of being welcomed in, I was pulled aside. Standing there, waiting in the hallway, was my old boss, Tom McAdams, his new assistant, and his son. None of them were smiling. Tom's voice was flat when he said, "This is a close circle event, for family and current team only." I fought back a laugh. "I gave 10 years to your company," his son muttered. "Don't start." I didn't care. I was too far past the point of caring. Literal strangers from LinkedIn were invited, but I wasn't. Tom's expression hardened. "You made your choices." "Yeah, I did. I left when I got a better offer. And that's what this was all about." The bourbon felt heavier in my hand. The envelope in my purse, even heavier. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just turned and walked away. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing in the empty hallway, like I was being erased from a story I helped write. My hand tightened around the bottle, and I heard the familiar scrape of Tom's shoes as he moved in front of me, blocking my path. His arms crossed, eyes narrowed. I said this is a close circle event, for family and current team only. I stared at him, my throat dry. "I gave 10 years to your company," Tom's son scoffed, his voice sharp. "Don't start." I didn't even glance at him. I was focused on Tom, on the way his face stayed locked in that same calculated expression. "Strangers from LinkedIn are here, but I wasn't invited?" Tom's lips tightened. "You made your choices." There it was again. The one line he always used, like it was supposed to make everything make sense. It didn't. But I didn't say it. I couldn't. Not with the weight of the envelope in my purse pulling me down. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice even. "I did." His eyes flickered, just for a second, but the mask was back up before I could catch anything. I looked at the floor, feeling the heat of my body trying to match the pressure in the air. There were so many things I wanted to say, things I wanted to throw back at him like the dirty truths I kept locked inside. I had sacrificed more than I cared to admit, but I didn't need to fight anymore. I stepped to the side, pushing past him, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The sound followed me down the hallway, the same rhythm as the slow burn of everything I had poured into that company, into him. It echoed in the empty space, and I didn't look back. It wasn't worth it. The bourbon still felt too heavy in my hand. The envelope, too, was a burden I had no interest in carrying any longer. And as I made my way toward the exit, it hit me. I wasn't walking away from just the event. I was walking away from everything he had convinced me mattered. It was one step, one small motion towards something that wasn't about him anymore, something that had never been about me. I didn't turn around. Not once. I found a quiet diner a few blocks away, the kind with faded booths and a neon sign that hummed like it was stuck in the past. I didn't bother with the menu. I just sat there, my hands curled around the envelope. The check inside, Tom's travel startup idea, was enough to fund everything he had pitched to me a month ago. He'd looked at me, wide-eyed, expecting me to say yes, to believe in it the way I used to believe in him. I'd written the check thinking maybe I still cared. Maybe that would show him something, but now it just felt like a bad joke, like something that didn't belong in my life anymore. I pulled a pen from my purse, the scratch of it on paper loud in the quiet booth. I drew a line across the check. Void. One time. Then again, harder this time. Void. And once more, because why not? Void. Each word felt like a breath of relief. The napkin was already stained with coffee rings, but I didn't care. I folded it and began to write. Simple words spilling out in messy loops. Tom. I used to think loyalty mattered. I gave you more than I should have. But I see now it was never about that for you. I was always just someone to help with the next favor, the next task. You needed me more than you wanted me. And I'm done with that. I'm done. Mara. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't polished. It was just the truth, and it was enough. When I finished, I stared at the napkin, the check, the bourbon still heavy in my hand. I thought about what it would feel like to just leave, to not give him the satisfaction of an explanation, of closure, just the words on a page, somewhere far from him. I stood up, walked to the mailbox around the corner, and dropped it in. The thud of it hitting the metal box was the last sound I heard for a long time. I felt still, like something toxic had finally bled out of me. As I sat there, the air in the diner thick with the smell of burnt coffee and grease, my mind drifted back to the early days with Tom. He'd been a legend in our industry, a name people respected and feared. Everyone thought I was lucky when he took me under his wing. I was just a kid, eager, hungry for any break I could get. He saw that. He saw the potential. And he offered a seat at his table, told me he could make me great. He mentored me, sure. He taught me how to negotiate, how to land deals, how to play the game. But there was always a catch, always strings attached. You owe me, he'd say, half joking, always with that edge of something I couldn't name back then. He'd say it like I should be grateful, like the hours I'd put in were nothing compared to the privilege of working for him. I thought I owed him too. At first, it didn't feel like a debt, it felt like loyalty. And I was good at loyalty. But it wasn't until years later that I realized what loyalty really meant to him. When I got sick one year and missed a major conference, Tom didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't care. Instead, he told people I couldn't handle pressure, the very thing I had spent years proving to him that I could. But that was Tom's way. He built you up, and when it was convenient, he tore you down. He praised other people, of course, publicly. He'd tell them how sharp they were, how they were the future. But me? I was his secret weapon, always kept behind the scenes. He never offered praise unless it was to remind me how much I still needed to prove. And when the times were tough, when his office rent came due, when the equipment was outdated, when his son's tuition needed covering, he came to me, not as a boss, but as someone who just needed help. At first, it wasn't a big deal. I had some savings from the deals I'd helped close, and I believed in what we were doing. I thought if I just kept pushing, if I kept helping him, it would all pay off. Over the years, I quietly wired him money, small amounts at first. Nothing to make a fuss over. Not because I was rich, I was far from it, but because I thought loyalty mattered. I thought that's what you did when you were part of a team. But I was just part of his support staff, not his team, not his circle. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was no different from the office equipment I'd helped him replace, or the tuition checks I'd signed for his son. I was just another cost to cover, another thing to keep him running. I thought I was helping him, but all I was doing was helping myself stay stuck. That's what it took for me to see it. I wasn't in his circle, I was in the background, and I'd never been anything else. 3 days after the party, my phone blew up. 53 missed calls. The first voicemail was from Tom. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We need to talk. I could hear the tension in his voice, but there was something else too, something thin and controlled, like he was trying to keep his anger from slipping out. The second voicemail was angrier. You embarrassed me. That's not what this was about, Mara. I let the voicemail sit there, the words still buzzing in my head, but I didn't call him back. The third voicemail hit the nerve. Everyone's talking. Why would you do that here? The twist in his voice made it clear. His concern wasn't that he had hurt me, wasn't about what he'd done. His concern was that people saw it, that people knew what he really was. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could call him back. I could play nice. I could pretend I didn't feel the weight of all those years I'd spent helping him, making him look good, making him feel powerful, but I didn't. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Hell, if I really wanted to hurt him, I could have done so much more. I didn't answer because I didn't want to lose myself again. I had already given up too much of myself for him, for his company, for his approval. The last thing I needed was to slip back into that old role of doing what I thought was right for him. I had done that for too long, so I ignored the next call, and the one after that. I didn't even listen to the voicemails after that third one. They didn't matter anymore, not like they used to. I had already made my decision, and that was enough. The next day, my phone buzzed with a blurry photo from an old coworker. It was a shot of Tom standing on stage, holding up my letter. The kind of photo you take when you don't realize how badly things are about to go south. Tom had opened it during his farewell speech, thinking it was some grand tribute. The smile he wore in the photo made me sick. He'd been expecting something soft, something that reinforced his narrative of how he'd shaped me. Instead, the room had gone silent. He had shown the voided check to everyone, bold strokes of black ink cutting through the paper. That check, the one I had written to him, had become the punchline of the night. I could imagine it, the awkwardness hanging in the air, the audience shuffling, wondering what the hell was happening. I pictured his assistant walking out, face flushed with something between disbelief and disgust. His son, from what I'd heard, had reportedly smashed a glass backstage, probably as a mix of anger and embarrassment. That night, I got a final text from Tom. "You made your point, but this was low." Classic Tom. He was always the one with the hurt feelings, always the one wronged, never seeing himself for what he really was, never seeing what he had done. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He was never wrong, in his mind. It didn't matter what I had gone through, what had built up over the years. The only thing that mattered was that he had been humiliated. I could feel the weight of his words, but not the sting I thought I would. Maybe that's what I wanted to feel, or maybe I had just run out of fucks to give. Either way, the silence that followed the text was louder than any response I could have given. The next morning, I saw the news before I even looked at my phone. Tom's assistant quit. Not just quit, stormed off. Word spread fast. I wasn't shocked. She had always seemed like she was teetering on the edge, like one day she'd realize she was just another pawn in his game. And apparently, she had. Then came the whispers. People started piecing things together. His retirement fund, which he'd always bragged about, turned out to be a patchwork of favors, unpaid loans, and promises never kept. Those weren't assets. They were debts. Everyone had been too afraid to ask the questions before, but once I pulled the curtain back, they couldn't stop doing the math. Who paid for what? Who covered which bills? The answers weren't pretty. I started getting DMs from old coworkers, their names popping up in my notifications. "Did you really fund the expansion? Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Didn't even read half of them. Not because I didn't care, but because I was too busy doing something radical, resting, real sleep, real quiet. I hadn't had either of those in years. For once, I wasn't holding anyone else's weight. Not Tom's, not his company's, not anyone else's. It was just me, letting my body catch up on everything it had been missing, on the hours I'd sacrificed, the energy I'd poured into something that wasn't mine. The phone could ring, the messages could pile up. I wasn't going to jump. Not this time. The quiet was louder than all the noise. A week later, I got a text from an HR rep I barely remembered. "Tom listed you as an emergency contact. He's applying for a contract. He needs your tax info." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Emergency contact. The man who told me I wasn't family was now pretending I was next of kin. The nerve of it. I didn't hesitate. I typed, "No." And that should have been the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. A couple of hours later, I saw an email from him in my inbox. Subject line, "Let's try again." I opened it because I needed to know what kind of mess he'd put together this time. It was everything I expected. An apology wrapped in guilt, followed by a financial ask. He was sorry for how things went down, sorry for how he'd hurt me. But then came the part where he subtly hinted that if I just helped him out, he'd make everything right. It was classic Tom, never taking full responsibility, always twisting things to make it look like I was the one holding a grudge. I closed the email without replying. I didn't need to read the rest of it. Not to him, not to his ex, not to his son. Silence was the only boundary they understood, and it was the only one I was willing to enforce now. Slowly, the noise died down. Tom's startup folded within a month, the promises crumbling faster than I could have imagined. He picked up part-time consulting gigs, the kind where you had to be desperate enough to need them, but not desperate enough to admit you needed them. His son blocked me online. It wasn't surprising. He'd been angry, embarrassed. But I wasn't going to waste any energy wondering if he was mad at me. The whole family had been a lie. Tom's ex posted cryptic quotes on social media about being freed from burden. I didn't need to read between the lines. The weight had finally fallen off her shoulders, too. The calls stopped. At first, I still checked my phone reflexively, half expecting one of them to reach out with some last-ditch plea or question about what had happened. But eventually, my phone stayed quiet. And for the first time in ages, I didn't feel obligated to respond. I started going to brunch again, just to sit in the sun and laugh with friends who never asked me to fix anything. I slept through the night, deep sleep, the kind I hadn't had in years. No more guilt missiles pinging my phone in the middle of the night. No more trying to figure out who needed me to do what for them. My friends started calling me more, but not for help. They called just to hang out, to catch up. They had stopped seeing me as some kind of fixer, and I didn't have to remind myself I wasn't that person anymore. I had finally stopped auditioning for a role I never got to play. The one where I was the loyal soldier, the one who always gave without question, who held everything together while everyone else got the praise. That part of me was gone. It felt good, more than good, necessary. I could finally be me. One morning, I sipped coffee on my balcony, watching the sun climb over the skyline. The city was still, the kind of quiet you get when the world hasn't woken up yet. I was half lost in the warmth of the cup, the faint hum of traffic below, when my phone buzzed. Tom. I didn't need to look at the screen to know. It had been a while since I'd heard from him, but the number was still saved. The call sat there, vibrating on the table next to me, like it was trying to reach through the silence I'd built. It rang once, twice, then a third time. I let it go. When it stopped, I picked up my phone, swiped the screen, and deleted the contact. Just like that. Gone. I blocked the number too. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief without guilt. It settled in my chest, slow and steady, like I could finally breathe without the weight of old promises holding me down. Was I wrong to send the letter? To void the check? To walk away without a speech? Maybe. Maybe there was a version of me that would have taken the high road, played nice, let it all go without saying a word. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it was the only way to stop playing the good soldier in someone else's fantasy. I'm not angry. I'm done. And that, honestly, feels better than revenge ever could.